third episode of the Action Shooting Show. Today we kind of have a different topic for us, and it's I guess this episode is going to be called "So I Just Bought a Gun, Now What?" And the whole thing from this came around because right now there's been this pandemic, and then we don't know what's going on with the next administration, and there's a lot of brand new gun owners. So, people buy a gun, they get it home, for protection, for whatever reason, usually something along self-protection. And then they get it home and it's like, well, now what do I do? Do I stick it in a soft sock drawer? What do I do? So we are going to kind of talk to those people. If you are a more seasoned shooter, maybe still hang out. Maybe there's some good information that you can pass on to newer shooters that you know. And if you know new shooters, maybe pass this episode on to them so that they can kind of watch it and get a good idea of what they're going to do. So,
or you can also tell us how wrong we are in the comments. You could point out that we're stupid and you should never do those things, and then we can have a big debate in the comments about who knows what's best for new gun owners, right?
There's something to be said about that. There's probably stuff we'll leave out. So yeah, feel free to comment in, or if we get a lot of stuff, we can always do another show on it. All right, so, and I'm going to go, actually, guys, a little bit off the script here. The first thing we should probably talk about is storage, because I think that's something a lot of new gun owners don't think about. They buy a gun, they get it home. Now, what are they going to do with it? So, I don't know, Mike, you want to start us off on that?
You got to unmute, Mike.
Yep, had to unmute the mic here. So storage is something that I've discussed a fair amount with my friends. And I think a lot of us evolved from a very similar place where we grew up in a home that might have had like a steel gun cabinet. This is something that's just like a stamped sheet metal, single key. It's not a fireproof solution, and it's not real high security. It's just to try to keep youth from tampering with guns. And while this is certainly a better option than storing in a sock drawer or a closet, it's really not ideal. And so it's
Mike,
definitely worth it.
Mike, not to cut in here, but I think maybe that's the first thing for people is have some way to secure it, not just from other people that shouldn't be in it, kids or whatever, but more than just all these guns come with a cheap little lock, that is supposed to keep it safe, by law. Get something more. So that steel cabinet is going to be better than just sticking it in a sock drawer. A really good gun cabinet that you can, or safe that you can bolt down, is probably going to be even better than that. But anything is better than just buying a gun and sticking it in the corner of your closet or tucking it underneath a mattress or something,
But if you only have that thing, use that thing. Don't, I think it's federal law. Every new gun comes with one of those little locks that goes through the action so that you can't load ammo into it. And, it's not going to prevent people from stealing it unless you have a small block Chevy in your living room that you could bolt it to. But it's to keep kids from accessing a firearm and accidentally discharging it. And that should be your first priority, is none of your family members should die by your own gun. Let's start just basic there.
Yep, agree.
From there, then we can talk about actual security. But if all you have is that little cable lock, use the little cable lock. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree with that, and then look into something better. If it's like a pistol for self-defense, they have quick access safes that you can get. Grab one of those and bolt it down somewhere if you can. Maybe hide it, but do something a little bit more. I don't think we need to get into safes what do you want to look for in a safe, but do something more than just buying it, leaving it where, Because even if it's not kids, even if, like, let's say you're a bachelor and you live alone, if someone breaks into your house and they're easily able to grab your, your Glock 19 or your shotgun or whatever, your AR-15, that's one more gun in the hands of the people who we're trying to defend ourselves from. So, yeah, I guess we can start there. The next thing, and this is maybe going to be the really big topic on here, is finding reputable training. Because you got a gun, you need to learn how to use it. You want to learn how to first be safe. Second, I think, is be proficient with it. And that is not always as easy as it may sound. I think the easiest thing, and this is just a real quick stepping stone, is NRA basics. They got NRA instruction it's just that. It's the absolute basic instruction. Have either of you guys taken any of those before?
No, I think for a lot of people, the first formal class that they've probably gotten would be if they pursued a concealed carry permit. I know that was my case.
I take that back. So I was shaking my head no to start, but in Minnesota you have to take firearm safety to be a hunter. And so I don't know if you guys took that. I think that's pretty close to NRA basics.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think you're right. And that's a good starting point. Hunter safety, NRA basics. It's basically just the 4 rules of firearm safety. Typically, it tells you kind of learn the different parts of the gun, how they function, how ammo functions on like a real basic level. It gives you the skills that if you show up to a class, more like a conceal and carry class or a defensive shooting class, that you've got a little bit more than just kind of knowing which end of the gun the bullet comes out of.
Also, nowadays, almost every gun range that has classes like that has women-only classes. So if you're a female listening to this and you're intimidated because you're going to have, like, take this video, for example, 3 idiots that think they know everything try and tell you and mansplain how guns work. If you're intimidated by that, they have women-only classes at almost every place that does training nowadays. So that's another good place to start, where you can get those fundamentals and understand how a gun works safely, and then move on to, guys with beards that want to tell you how to shoot guns.
and women-only organizations. The Well Armed Woman is a really popular one. A Girl and a Gun is really, really popular. My wife does that. There's a couple chapters in our area. My guess is there's probably even regional ones. I mean, Well Armed Woman and A Girl and a Gun is national. A Girl and a Gun is everywhere from California to the East Coast, and I would imagine most states have one of those. So yeah, there's all kinds of pink pistols. That's I think like an LB. I think that's more like gay people. I excuse me if I'm not politically correct, but that is specifically for people in that. I know there's some for if you're a different race, if you're a different religion, there's probably a gun group for you. So that's a good place to start if that's where you're wanting. Getting controversial already, Mark. Sorry.
I love it so much.
But I mean,
you're right on. You're spot on.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
We're talking about something like 8 million new gun owners in America right now in the last year. And so there are, again, millions of people that are in the exact same position as you. If you're more comfortable with people that you feel have the same identity as you, seek out those groups, and that's a great place to start. They'd be more than happy to have you.
Yeah. Having said that, the and not that this doesn't exist, the gun culture that a lot of people think of, these old guys, white guys and hunters and this and that, like, there still exists, but the modern gun culture is like way different. I mean, if you get into the right area, you will find someone that you identify with. And really, the places that I hang out, I'll just say that no one cares. Come up any race, any nationality, any sex, any whatever, you take your pick. If you come out and you want to be safe and get better with guns, they're not going to turn you away. They're not going to like give you the side eye. It's just going to be like, hey, what are you shooting? Here's what I'm shooting. You know, that's kind of the modern gun culture for the most part. And if you find those fuddy type places that, you know, you walk in that gun store and they look like, you know, they're give you the side eye and stuff, go to another one. You know, if that's what your gun club's like, find another one. There's one out there that won't do that. You got anything to add to that, Mike?
Nope. I think you guys covered that extremely well.
All right. So when we're just talking about going on beyond basic training, and this was maybe the biggest part of what I wanted to talk about, because there are a lot of really good instructors in this day and age, and there are a lot of really, really bad instructors. And it is, even for experienced shooters, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between those. And I think we can all talk about, you know, I think we all have some different ideas and maybe what to look for, what not to. I know some of the best advice I was ever given, and I forget the show. This was a podcast I heard, but they suggested asking your instructor what was the last thing that, first, what was the most recent training you've taken? If whoever your firearms instructor isn't still training, taking other people's classes to learn, there's a good chance they're teaching something that's not up to date, or possibly like, well, this is what they taught me in the police academy, or this is what they taught me in the Air Force or the Army or the Marines, or, you know, if they're teaching something that they learned 20 years ago, some of that information is still relevant. Some of that information is not. The second question that goes along with that is, what have you changed your mind on most recently? Because if you're really studying, and that's what this should be, you know, if you're studying the handgun defensively, rifle defensively, even just for fun, you know, if you're just a recreational shooter, if you're really trying to learn, you will find that something that you did in the past maybe is not ideal, and that you've upgraded, you know, what your thoughts are on that. So but if you find an instructor that's like, I can't really, you know, haven't really been taking any training. Nah, you know, everything I've been doing is it's been right for as long as I've been doing it, then maybe look for another instructor. Like, that instructor still may not be good, but if, you know, it's hard to, I don't know, if they haven't learned anything, I'd be really wary. So I don't know if you guys, I guess, Mike, you got something?
Yeah. Something that I would add is just be wary of instructors that are selling entertainment. And so, you know, you get this cool guy attitude of, I was police, SWAT, military, and they're selling you an experience with that background as their qualification. And you'll see some real cool range videos. They'll be doing some stuff that might look really tactical or advanced. And understand that really a lot of the fundamentals where we all started, that would have been a hindrance. So don't follow necessarily everything that looks fast and shiny.
Yeah,
And I would add,
yeah.
Go ahead.
You go, Mark.
I would say, or I would add, do not tolerate any trainer that compromises safety. So once you've learned basic firearm safety, you have the 4 basic firearms rules burned and ingrained in your brain. You're thinking about getting them tattooed on your arm. You know, you really care about safety. Do not tolerate any trainer that compromises safety. So you and it's tough to say this and to actually follow through with it. So like if you're taking a class and you're getting swept with guns, meaning someone's pointing a gun either by you or around you, you have to be willing to leave. You have to be willing to ask for your money back. Even if you don't get your money back, you have to be willing to leave. That's a huge red flag that is not appropriate training. And so you want to do not compromise on safety. Even if you're told this is the trainer you have to take, if they're not safe, you got to leave. You can't compromise. And there's too many horror stories about so-called, big names in training doing unsafe things. So I would say that's one of the things you want to be watching for in your trainers or whoever you're getting education from.
Yeah, if you've been into firearms long, you will see like videos of like, line of people, and like half the people are out in front and then the other half are back, and they're all shooting forward at a target. Like if that's what's going on, you're walking in front of other people shooting, or I've seen some as bad as like the instructor is walking back and forth in front of the line, where like the idea is that when he walks, you gotta like point your gun in a different direction or do something. If the instruction involves pointing a gun at another human being, that that's not like a sim gun, and then under really strict, like when you do sim classes, there's like really, really strict stuff. If it's anything but a sim class and you're pointing a gun at someone, like, no, that's anyone that tells you that the 4 rules of firearm safety don't count in a gunfight that's definitely one to avoid.
Or this is an advanced class. Look, we know that you folks you really understand what's going on. So we're going to play with the big boy rules now. And so I might point this loaded gun at you, but I'm not putting my finger on the trigger. And even if I do put my finger on the trigger, I'm not really squeezing it. So you're totally safe. Like you don't want to screw around with stuff like that. And you got to be willing to walk away. And so Ryan says you can see videos of this. Sure, you can see all sorts of terrible videos. I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't go into a class or any trainer and say, well, let's wait for him to screw up. I would say it's a very rare thing, but it's one of those things. When we're talking about how do you find reputable training, I would say safety needs to be priority. And I would say that it's going to be priority for most trainers, but just something to look for as far as the topic goes.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's rare, and more of it's getting more and more rare, because with the internet, that kind of stuff doesn't fly for long. If you got people doing that, your class list starts to go down a pretty good amount. And you're talking, I think you or Mike mentioned something about like advanced stuff. If you've got an instructor that's talking about advanced and not talking about like, everything is the fundamentals. It gets cliche, but like there's no advanced shooting. There's just the fundamentals done faster, done maybe under a little bit more stress or under a different situation. But, if you've got some instructor telling you that there's like cool guy secret stuff that he's going to teach you, he's probably not. I think Mike's probably done more pistol training than the rest of us. You've taken some bigger names, Mike. Have you had any of them ever tell you that they're teaching you cool guy stuff or like something that's advanced?
No. And one of the things you talk about, the rules of firearm safety always apply. Even in a sim class that I've taken where we were doing force on force and using sim guns, it really got hammered into us by the instructor and the AIs that pointing guns at people that don't need guns pointed at them is absolutely wrong. It doesn't matter if it's a sim gun that's only got a pellet. You need to have a very good justification for why you're doing that action.
Yeah, exactly. Any good instructor will tell you that exact same thing. If you're pointing a gun at someone, that's because you intend to shoot them. That's the only reason. In a self-defense situation, that's acceptable. If you're just, sweeping by people, to point at the bad guy, that's not good. But yeah, I think that's I mean, anyone else have anything to add to that as far as like maybe vetting or finding good instructors?
One last thing I'd say, and this isn't a universal rule, but I would, if I were looking online or if I was trying to figure out who's good, I would look at what instructors other instructors recommend. That'd be one thing that I'd probably say. So, if you can find, well, I run so and so training corporation, and if you're in the neighborhood, take a class with so and so. That's who I recommend if I'm not around. That would be a good sign to me. It could be maybe a little incestuous where somebody's just promoting their friend's business, but look at what trainers recommend other trainers and see if that's a good way to kind of point you in the right direction.
Well, and there's trainers nationally that like travel all over the United States. Typically that's probably a safe bet, but really, especially if it's your first class, go into a couple different gun shops and tell them I want to get trained. And like if 3 different gun shops tell you the same person, that's probably a good one. Or if 2 of them tell you the same person, and if you hit enough people, you'll probably find the local trainer that's really up to date and does a good job teaching. Doesn't just know how to shoot, but knows how to teach as well.
Right. And another thing is a lot of people don't realize it, but they're within driving distance of a really popular training facility for civilians, military, and law enforcement. And here in Ohio, there's a facility in Northeast, and then there's another range in the Southwest corner. And both of these facilities host some of the biggest national uh, traveling instructors that are well recognized for their classes and their teaching materials. But what a lot of people don't realize is the range staff also instruct. And so the classes are cheaper than these nationally ranked instructors that are coming through, but these range staff are learning from these people and teaching the same up-to-date information just in smaller classes. So that's another excellent way to get up-to-date information from people who are constantly training and evolving, but without paying for necessarily a name or a company to teach you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a great thing. And I guess to put this in perspective, even some of these big name classes, like a 2-day class is probably going to cost you somewhere between, and this depends on the instructor, but let's say for local to national, you're going to spend between 150 and $300 for a 2-day class plus ammo, which right now obviously isn't great. I don't know. I imagine a lot of instructors are going to be lowering the round count that they go through or doing other things. But if you think about, buying $300 just in ammo, you are going to come out so far ahead, not just in like learning the safety aspect and learning, but the techniques and getting yourself to be more proficient with the gun. It would take you thousands and thousands of dollars in ammo to get out of it what you get out of a $300 class. So I think some people balk at the price, and for me, it's not like I can just go to every $300 class that comes in the area, but save your money, spend it wisely, find a good instructor that you can go to, and really you'll come out ahead when you're done.
Well, it's an investment in
And
yourself too. You can think of it as, it's like fitness. It's like anything else. Your good instructors will help you learn how to make yourself better. So they'll give you tips on how to improve. They won't be able to maybe show you this is the perfect way, but they'll explain why they do things a certain way and try and get you into a position where you can do things either similarly or whatever's best for you. If you have any sort of physical limitations, they'll help you to work around those so that you can train yourself when you leave that course. And so that, you're investing in your future in this idea of being a gun owner, defending yourself, taking responsibility for your own safety, those sort of things. And so it's money well spent in that sense.
Well, something that I've talked to other shooters that I've come to realize and they've come to realize is sometimes seeking good instruction and a 1, 2, maybe 3 day class and yeah, biting the bullet to do 150 to maybe $600 for a class fee really pays off in the long run. I think of how many thousands of rounds of ammunition I've spent and the money and time spent that I really could have saved by going to the class, learning the right way, getting that good instruction right off the bat, and I would have been ahead. So sometimes it's definitely worth spending that little bit to invest in yourself. Maybe a friend that is an experienced shooter and is trying to help you. That's a great offer, but you could spend a lot of time and money and not come out as far ahead as if you'd have just gotten good professional instruction.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So, and I guess maybe we should have done this before, but there are different kinds of classes. So when you're signing up for a class, it's probably important to understand what that instructor teaches. So, at the most basic, we said there's like a basic safety course. Then you'll have courses more designed towards marksmanship, where they're just teaching you the fundamentals of like a good sight picture, good trigger press. You have we'll call it tactical, but like that would be more conceal and carry, home defense, carbine, defensive carbine, stuff like that. So you have classes like that, but then you just have like competition classes. So like if you found this podcast because through Action Shooting Sports, maybe you're wanting to get better at that. There is just strictly guys who go around training you to shoot USPSA better, shoot 3-gun better, shoot IDPA better, cowboy action probably, whatever that is. PRS. There's things specifically for that, and really, all of those tend to feed into each other because it's all still the basics. It's just that a USPSA class will probably teach you how to not only shoot but maybe navigate through the course quickly. As 3-gun's going to teach that with all 3 guns. So there's definitely more than just one type of class that you can take as far as training goes.
Ryan, would you consider yourself an action shooting sports trainer? Would you say that you really get into training that action shooting sports? Or is that, something you try and do a deep dive into, or is that maybe not maybe not your area of expertise? What would you say about that?
As far as training, I mean, most of my training I know where you're actually trying to go with this. What Mark?
You started you picked the name for this show without telling us, so I'm just getting back at you.
Yeah. To answer that so that people don't think this is just a really odd conversation, I train and I've done more defensive classes than I have the shooting sports because this is more of a hobby. So if I'm going to train, that's what I'm going to do. I have taken a little bit though, so I like to try to shoot. I dabble in all the shooting sports.
So, and when we're talking about different types of training, I think that it's also good to bring up that sometimes you're going to get into training that conflicts. And that's okay as long as you understand what you're taking in the material and how it's being referenced. You might be doing a reload through an open area on the move if you're focusing on training for a pistol action shooting sport. But if you're focusing on maybe a concealed carry or home defense type class, you're going to want to reload behind cover. Things like that, as long as you understand the context that the material is being instructed in, is not going to be a problem.
And also look for ways that they complement each other as well. It's not just about how they conflict. So if you take a competition shooting class, they're going to teach you fast movement, fast shooting, fast reloading. All those things apply when you take a more tactical class or more conceal and carry class, but then you want to kind of meld those two ideas together so that you're not reloading after you shot 4 shots just because you're moving positions. That would be a bad habit that you took away from competition shooting. So you want to kind of see where those balance and work together to improve your overall shooting, I'd say.
Yeah, and they really do dovetail nicely. I'm just thinking about some of the experiences that I've had in my force-on-force classes, and you can see guys that have either shot competitively or taking competitive shooting instruction. They're much more fluid in their engagements in a dynamic situation. They move, they get their hits, they're less likely to get hit. So it certainly has overlap. It's really important to get a well-rounded training experience.
Yeah, and when you talk about conflict, and I'm glad you took us in this direction, Mike. There are even times where, we'll say technique-wise, you go and instructor A says, hey, you should do this with your pistol grip. You've taken instruction before, or maybe you shoot a lot of ways. I think it's always worth trying whatever this new instructor's telling you. Try it in their class. If they say, hey, you should get your thumbs forward, you should get this hand up higher, you should do this. It's worth trying. Try it that whole class, see how it works out. Maybe it's faster and you didn't even know it. Maybe when it's all said and done, it's not faster, and that old way that you learned from this other instructor was the better way. And that's fine. When you go to a class and you learn something, you don't have to apply that all the time. You can throw that out. But I think it's worth giving that instructor a fair chance to do that, and just instead of saying, look, well, actually, no, I grip it like this, or actually I do my reload like this, because you're paying for them to teach you. Give it a shot. And most good instructors, if you're trying it or they see you're doing something different, I've been in more than one classes where they say, nope, that what you're doing works for you. Just do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. This is just a different way. So kind of balance that out. But I think it's worth, especially if you start taking more classes, which I think you should. You may find that what you learned before was okay then, but this is better, or maybe not, and you just kind of have to figure that out and on your own. But give it a fair shake. Don't just write it off because, yep, this is what I've been doing, this works for me. You guys got anything to add to that topic?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So, we found training. Maybe we've taken some. If you're a new shooter and you're really getting into this, I would highly recommend finding a local shooting club. Now, there's a couple caveats with this. Depending on where you're at in the country, sometimes there's not a lot of options. Sometimes there's a ton. And they're not always real obvious. You would think you would know about a shooting range. Like, there'd be noise, there'd be like signage. A lot of them don't have great signage. When I say shooting range clubs, I'm talking about like usually smaller private ranges. They're usually like membership owned. But if you really start, doing a Google search, like I said, go into some gun stores. I mean, there's one that's 15, 20 minutes from me I never knew existed. I'm a member of one that's further away, but I didn't know that existed for years. And there's probably 3 or 4 of them that I've heard of that are all within like a 40-minute drive of me. Getting into these clubs, they have matches a lot of times. They have get-togethers. They may all get together and shoot on certain days, or have different clubs, or have different things. Kind of getting into the shooting world and getting around other like-minded people is a really good way to grow your skills, because then you find people who know more than you, that know less than you, that really just it's an easier way to, I think, kind of get into it. I shot guns for a long time just on private property and just, kind of on my own because I just didn't know other people. And as soon as I mean, my shooting got so much better once I got plugged into the action shooting sports and started doing 3-gun and, that kind of thing because you meet all these people. I mean, the two guys on this podcast and Tiger, when he's on, we all met through the shooting sports. So I think that's important. I don't know if you guys got something to add to that.
Yeah, I got some. So if Mike's got nothing, a lot of these private ranges will have wait lists, and if you're even on the fence about joining, get on the wait list. It never hurts. Some of the clubs will say that you need a sponsor, and you think, well, I don't even know anybody in this town. How am I going to get a sponsor? Hop on Facebook. The club probably has a Facebook page, or there's probably a either statewide, local, tri-state. There's probably some gun-related group in your area. If you hop on there and you're not an idiot in the comments, and then later say, hey, would anybody be willing to sponsor me at this club? 10 people will probably send you a private message and say, yeah, I'd be happy to sponsor you. So those are some good options there. And then, yeah, just like Ryan said, once you get plugged into a club, you start meeting people, and then you can start building friendships. You can have people that help build you up, help work with you to get better. Also, they probably have gear that you can either borrow or try, so you don't have to invest so much into, well, I want a new holster. Let's try this out. Okay, that sucked. The guys at your club probably have most guys that are in a gun club have an entire drawer full of crappy holsters. They'd be happy to let you borrow. But yeah, getting plugged into a group. And if you're having trouble finding a club, like Ryan said, they may be around you and you don't know. Get on Facebook, get on whatever the social media replacement for Facebook is, depending on your political orientation. So people are happy to talk to you about that stuff. If you can find a forum, simple Google search will get you a long ways, but there may be clubs around you that you don't even realize it, and social media is a good way to find those things. So definitely something to check out.
Mike, you got anything to add?
Nope, I think you guys covered it. You just got to be willing to get out there and get active in the community, and I think most people will be surprised at how open and embracing it is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think a benefit that maybe not seem obvious at first, there's a lot of places have state ranges that you pay so much to go to, and it's usually not that expensive. Or the indoor ranges, tend to be all over the United States, and those tend to be a little more expensive, and you can get like memberships but most of these private clubs, and I'm sure it depends on where you're at, I'll use mine for an instance. That there's like almost 1,300 members of this club. We've got 7 bays for shooting, just center fire or rifle, pistol, shotgun, and there's very few times where you can't go out there and you get a whole bay to yourself. A lot of times, the only way that you could draw from a holster will be at a range. Most indoor ranges won't allow you to draw from a holster. State ranges won't allow you to draw from a holster. A lot of the stuff that we do in this, you really need to be a member of a private club to do that. So not only are you able to go out and get bays by yourself and not have indoor range you go to just about any time. There's you want to shoot pistol at an indoor range, and there's some guy next to you shooting his AR-15 with a big old, tank muzzle brake on it, just rattling your fillings out, shooting a fist-sized group at like 5 yards or whatever. Like, that's not a real conducive for getting better at shooting. Going out to an outdoor range where you got a whole bay by yourself and you can shoot some drills or, do whatever, that's a much better way to get better and usually a more enjoyable shooting time. So that's I think a big benefit to a private range.
So we maybe didn't do a good job of clarifying this, or maybe I missed it. But part of why you want to get this private range is these skills are incredibly depreciable. You lose your trigger control, you lose your fundamentals, your if we were a tactical trainer, your kinesthetic movements and stuff like that. All that stuff fades away if you're not practicing it. And so you need to have a membership at a range so that you can be getting out to the range, hopefully at least once a month, if not more. If you're paying, $15 for a half hour at your local indoor range, that's going to add up really quickly. If you can get a private membership for $100 a year, or even $200 a year, and you can get out there twice a month, that's going to be a lot better for you. And it's like anything else. It's if you're not using it, you're losing it. And so that's why we're trying to push this idea. I don't know if we clarified that in the beginning, but if you want to have these skills, you need to be practicing these skills. You can go back to episode 2 and add in dry fire, but you need to be confirming it with live fire. You need to be reinforcing those things with live fire. And that's why it's really important to try and get a club membership if you can, or find at least somewhere to shoot. That may be another thing you can pick up. Ryan was talking about private ranges. If you're not a jerk in these groups, there may be somebody that has a little chunk of land that he shoots on, or he or she shoots on, and they'd be happy to have you out. It'd be another option, maybe save you a little money there. But look for a place where you can get shooting time as frequently as you can.
So and now this whole show, we call it the Action Shooting Show, and so why do we think the action shooting sports are important? And we've mentioned before, there's 3-gun, there's USPSA, there's IDPA. What is the importance of these? And I can speak for myself, and I think these guys will probably chime in with similar experiences that, I did some classes, I shot at ranges, or public ranges, and, my private, just, farm, and felt like I was pretty competent with a gun. Yeah, I'm pretty good with a pistol. I can put a piece of paper out there at 5 yards or 10 yards, and it's not bad. And then you go, I went to my first, it was an indoor pistol match, kind of, I guess, outlaw IDPA. And I don't think I saw my sights for the first 2 stages. Just, I thought that I was shooting the way I should. And, I'm rushing, I'm just spraying bullets all over the place, not hitting, barely hitting anything. And it's very, very humbling. And the more that I've gotten through this and the further I've gotten in it, it's given me the confidence that I can go into a situation. I'll take a defensive shooting class. I now know how fast I can shoot and get the hits that I need. If I'm at 5 yards, it's one speed. If I'm at 25, it's another speed. And not that it never happens, but you get much better at pace, knowing what's my skill level. Can I take that shot? At what speed can I take that shot? And not just, you'll see people all the time in defensive classes when you're doing a drill, and man, blah, blah, they'll blast off these splits, and it's like, yeah, there's no holes on that paper. And it's easy to laugh at and think ha, ha, ha. But most people who don't regularly shoot like this, and you can do it without the action shooting sports, because there's drills and defensive stuff, but getting out in front of other people, having someone hold a timer up in your ear, beep, and okay, now I have to deliver a certain course of fire. Maybe I made it up, maybe it was given to me, but having to do that in a quick manner under stress, it's difficult, and it's not. You'll hear people say, well, that's not the same as being shot at. I've not been shot at. I don't know. But if you can't do it with a timer in your ear, like the little bit of artificial stress that a timer puts in you, then I would be really hard pressed to believe that you could do it if your life or your kid's life was on the line. So you got something maybe to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, I would agree the closest to getting shot at for me has been in my force on force classes. And I've watched even experienced competitive shooters, including myself, start to kind of have the wheels want to come off when you've got maybe one or two threats coming at you in a room or down a hallway. And so getting out and doing a little pressure test on yourself and maybe the things that you've practiced, whether you've practiced your emergency reloads or your TAC reloads, okay, let's do this in a friendly, open environment where you can watch other people in a competitive setting and see how they're doing it. And okay, is this working for me, or do I need to go back to a drawing board and find another option?
Yeah, and I certainly didn't want to suggest that competition is like a preparation for getting shot at. But I think, like Mike said, even with doing all this, you get into ratcheting the stress up a little bit, and like the wheels fall off for everybody until they really get that experience.
Right. And this is the other thing too, is that you're not doing this, you don't do competition or take these classes because you think you're John Rambo, or at least you shouldn't be doing it. It's if you're buying a gun for self-defense, you're taking responsibility for your own safety, and to truly do that, you actually need to put work into that. Buying a car doesn't make you a driver. Buying a handgun does not mean that you are safe and able to defend yourself. One common thing that we see in competitions, particularly pistol competitions, is police officers will come to their first competition, and they've went to academy. They feel pretty confident. They shoot their qualification, and they're experts. And that first competition, they almost universally get throttled and finish towards the bottom. And it's not because they're using such great tactical techniques and it's just a game. It's because their shooting level is just not where it needs to be or where it could be for them to be proficient with the gun. And the good police officers realize that if I'm trusting my life to this handgun and maybe involved in violent situations, I need to get up to speed quickly, and they'll stick with it. You can read online, or you can run into people that say, well, it's just a game. I'm not going to waste my time with the game. Yeah, you're kind of coping, I think. You're not appreciating that, yes, it's a game, but it's a game where you have to shoot quickly and accurately. If you're in a self-defense situation, you need to shoot quickly and accurately. Tactics, we talked about taking classes where you can learn the tactics, but shooting quickly and accurately is a foundational thing that you need to do. And so it's fun. It's a great hobby. But if you're serious about self-defense, I mean, it's about rounding out those skills and putting them into practice. And it's something that you need to consider if you're serious about that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say, and this is me and Mike, probably, I know it's definitely a mentor for me. The guy that was running the 3-gun match when me and Mike first started was a police officer. He's retired now. And and then Scott, who shot. Those are 2 police officers. They are some of the best shooters that I've ever shot with. Professional, I mean, I've shot with sponsored shooters, and those 2 guys, Chris Garrison, if he shot at it, it was 2 where he wanted it and he was moving on. I mean, both of them were phenomenal shooters. And, Scott, we still shoot with him on occasion, and he'll shoot 1 match a year, and he shows up and he still slays it because he's got those skills. And I think those guys enjoyed the sport aspect of it, but at the same time, they understood the importance of being committed to marksmanship. And we've discussed, or at dinner after matches, a lot of the other training and stuff. And those guys, they took the tactics part and their police job seriously, and they took the competition part, serious, to understand, what they needed to do. So I don't know, Mike, you got any more to add to that?
Yeah, it really can be fun. While the training is serious and you definitely want to set out with a goal in mind. The If you are going at it like it's life and death practice every time you step out the door with a box of practice ammo and a gun, you are going to get so burned out, and eventually all you will see is doom and gloom, so to speak. Get out, enjoy the culture, enjoy the learning experience, and you know, if you are training for defensive, it's such a small, I'd say, chance that it would happen. And yeah, we train for that small chance, but I look at how much joy the interaction with people and friends that I've gained from this and lifelong friendships. And I wouldn't have that if I had just stepped out the door and gone, stood in a bay and run a drill and focused on, hey, this is some Rambo training or something. And so I'm so grateful for all the fun and happiness I've had over the years doing the action shooting sports.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I, we're kind of bringing that up because there is more than just the sports aspect, the fun aspect of it. We're bringing that up, but Mike's 100% right. Like the reason I shoot, I'll shoot at least a 3-gun match a month, if not more, and running gun matches, and it is because of the fun of it. It goes beyond just I kind of got into it with more than offensive, but it's just fun sport. And I think maybe that's a good transition to, what the action shooting sports don't do. And what they don't do is definitely, they don't teach you tactics. What you're doing in a 3-gun stage is not preparing you for going over to Afghanistan and fighting, over there in the desert. It's not, IDPA, this is, maybe I'll get some controversial. IDPA is not training you for what you're going to do if you had to use your conceal and carry. And the same with USPSA. There are skills that you are learning in that can easily be translated over to other things. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you, and people do it, and that's fine. Like we've had people come to my 3-gun match and treat it as a training thing, which is cool. Like, to each their own. I think you kind of handicap yourself and you take some of the fun out of it when you could just treat 3-gun as a fun 3-gun match that the skills translate over. So don't come out to one of these matches, and even IDPA, which is, I guess maybe probably are also arguably the closest to a defensive pistol sport, is still, when you start applying rules to it, now it's a game and it's not training in that way. So don't get into it thinking that this is realistic, because that's definitely not. But it's definitely these skills transfer over, but it's not the same thing. So I don't know, Mike, you got anything to add with that?
Yeah, I've probably taken a few more tactics based or involved classes than some of the other guys. And I'll definitely say that the competitive shooting that I've done made learning the tactics easier, because when I'm learning how to go in and maybe clear a room or move with a partner through a structure, I'm already comfortable moving with a gun. I'm comfortable with the footwork, and I can really focus on absorbing the tactics side without just trying to move with the gun. So little things like that, it certainly is a step forward when you go in and you're trying to absorb something, if some of the basics you already are comfortable with.
But I think it would be safe to, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would be safe to assume that you don't go through a shoot house in the same way that you would go through a 3-gun stage.
No, that would probably have some pretty disastrous results unless you're John Wick.
Yeah. So and that's just the point. Like, you have these skills that you've gained from a sport just for the fun. Now you go to this class, you learn the tactics part of it, the fluidly moving with a gun, and the confidence that you know what you're doing is there, but you're doing it totally different. So I think that's an important key to mention.
So I don't have anything to add as far as what it doesn't do. I think you guys hit that really well, but you guys made me think of some other things that it does do. So we talked about it's going to make your skills better. You're going to meet great people. Another thing that it does is it tests your gear and it tests your technique. And so if you bought Pistol X because so-and-so told you to, or because you watched a YouTube video, and then you get to the range, and when you run that gun hard and hot and dirty, it doesn't run, this is a great place to figure that out. You know, finding that out in a friendly Sunday afternoon competition is way better than finding out that this gun is junk when you absolutely need it. And so, along with that technique, you know, I always run my magazines bullets pointed backwards. Well, once you're on the timer and you see that you're the slowest person fumbling these reloads every single time, it's kind of an eye opener that, oh, maybe that technique's not the best. So it's great for improving skill, but it vets your skill. It you know, it puts it under the test. Is this gun good? Is this skill? Am I applying this skill correctly? So that would be some other positives. You know, people like to recommend certain shotguns, let's say, and certain shotguns are real good for the first couple hundred rounds. But
Jam Pro.
Not naming any names, but those guns tend to not run the more rounds you put them through or the harder pace of shooting that you put them through. And you'll find those things out in competition. You know, they'll say that the two loudest sounds that you'll ever hear are a click when you expect a bang and a bang when you expect a click. So find those things out on a flat range with your friends laughing at you instead of, you know, in your bedroom when somebody's at the door downstairs, or in your car when there's a group of people around it banging on the windows. You know, that would be another benefit that we didn't touch on. But I think you guys hit all the realistic, or, you know, are we being realistic about what it's not doing as well? So
Yeah, for sure. So we'll try. I'm trying to keep this moving so we don't go too long. So getting into the action shooting sports, you're new. You've got a gun. You've taken some classes. Hopefully, you know, some basic classes, maybe a shooting class. So how do you get into it? I first find a sport that interests you. Depending on what you're wanting to do, you know, if you are really hyper competitive, you want to be the best at whatever you do, and you want to go shoot a match that is like the fairest, the absolute, like who's the best of on that day. You know, maybe that's your USPSA shooter. That tends to be like attract a lot of those guys. Now, three gun on the other hand, it does attract some of those people, but you've got three different guns. You've got bigger stages a lot of the times. The rule set, there's not one specific rule set right now. So if you're a guy who like really likes that structure of like this is what's happening all the time, like three gun won't be for you. But if you're kind of like, hey, I want to get out and shoot and do kind of different things and not be throttled by like shooting the same thing all the time, maybe three guns for you. IDPA is definitely even more structured than USPSA. So, you know, it's worth going to a couple of these different matches and seeing what you like. Unless your heart's just set on three gun, and I don't blame you if it is, I would recommend starting in a pistol sport. Like, I think realistically, USPSA is probably the best gateway sport because the rules are super structured. There's matches everywhere. They're, you know, the culture, it kind of depends on the club, but like most of them will kind of, you know, kind of somewhat hold your hand, I'll say, try to help tell you what you need to know. And that, I think that structure is great for when you're first getting into it. So, you know, if you can shoot a USPSA match first, but shoot IDPA, shoot three gun. If you like the old stuff, the cowboy action shooting, you know, if you got some guns like that, If you're new, you probably don't have the guns that you need for cowboy action shooting. And yeah, I would say though that a pistol sport, like a single gun sport, maybe is easier, but there's a lot of people who come out to my match that have never shot anything else that start in 3-gun and they do fine. So I guess kind of let that be your guide. But do you guys have some maybe recommendations or suggestions? If Mark, you want to go?
Read the rules. Read the rule book. Open it. Every single rule book is online. Read the rules before you show up. Not only, I'm sorry, I'll lower my tone. I'm a range officer. And so, so many people come up and they're like, well, now what do I do? Like, well, did you read the rules? Do you understand what we're trying to do here? It's all laid out in the rule books. Even, Ryan will say that 3-gun is less rule structured. The rule book still lays out everything that's going to happen on that day, all the policies, all the procedures, penalties, gear. It's all in the real book, and it's 8th grade reading level stuff. It's not complicated rules. And some of it may not make sense until you get out there, but at least you've read it and you understand what to expect. But yeah, read the rules. It helps a lot. It's going to make your first time easier, and people are happy to clarify things when you get out there. So you'll get out there and say, well, what does a reshoot mean? Okay, I'll explain that to you. Yeah, I can give you a little more detail, but at least you're speaking the same language as everybody on the range. And so when they're giving you range commands, you understand what that means. And then you can also avoid huge mistakes like coming with loaded guns onto a cold range. Or your friend saying, what gun do you got? Well, let me show you. And then you pull it out and now you're DQ'd. Almost every shooting sport is going to say cold range, meaning no ammo and guns. And they're going to say, keep your gun in a holster until a range officer has told you to load and make ready. So things like that. Oh, you can avoid so many hassles by just reading the rules. So I would start with that. Also, tell the match director or your range officer or anyone that you're a new shooter, and they will be happy to help you. They often have, Bob, who helps all the new shooters through. There's always, every range has that Bob or Bill that's just, oh yeah, you go with this guy. He's going to help you through everything. It'll make things so much easier for you. You don't have to stand in the back and be quiet and, hopefully no one will know I'm new. No, you want to be forward with that. Let everyone know you're new and they'll help you. And it'll go a long ways to smoothing the process of getting into these things. Also, don't run out and buy gear if you can help it. I mentioned going on social media. If you come out and say, hey, I bought a pistol, I have a holster, but I don't have any mag pouches. 15 guys will have mag pouches that you can borrow. You don't have to run out and buy things like fancy belts or holsters or whatever. People are happy to help you. This sport will bend over backwards to make things easier for you. So get out, don't be afraid. Everyone had a first time. That's such a cliche thing to say, but we were all brand new green shooters, missing half the targets, but it hooked us enough to keep us going. So those would be the things I'd say.
Yeah, I agree mostly. I do agree to read the rules. I wouldn't get too wrapped up in them because I think as a new shooter, probably a lot of what's in there you won't understand. I think most USPSA matches will actually have like a new shooters meeting before it. I know I've been to USPSA matches that had that. So another good reason. USPSA has been around. It's very well structured. I'm not a huge fan of USPSA just because of personal preferences. Like I'll shoot some matches here and there, but it's just not what I find fun in a shooting sport at this point in my career. But that's absolutely probably the best way to start because they've got it down as to how to get people into it. So yeah, don't get too wrapped around the axle though about like read the rule book, kind of have general idea. If you can find someone beforehand, definitely ask them. And Mark's right, don't buy gear. I mean, I have brought gear for new shooters to run the entire match. I mean, we all have extra guns if you're in the sport for a little while, you get what you like, and then you get like something else that you try, and then that old thing sits around. And I have a new shooter right now. He shot my pistol and my rifle for the first 3/4 of the year of 3-gun. He just brought ammo. I brought guns, holsters, everything. Eventually, he built his own rifle. Then a little bit later, he was able to buy a pistol. So now he's got all his own. He just started with a shotgun. And if he wanted to bring that shotgun, I would have brought him my shotgun. So and that's not a unique situation. That's pretty well across the board at every match that I've ever heard of. Like I've never heard of anyone going to a match where someone wouldn't loan him their gun. So you have anything to kind of add on with that, Mike? You've been quiet over there.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the advantages of if you're just willing to try to get involved. I know I went and watched a match before I ever went and shot, and that was definitely when the light bulb clicked of, hey, I can do that. I'm going to have to learn. I'm going to have my embarrassments, but it was worth getting out and trying. And if you show up and ask, hey, I've got my hearing protection and eye protection, I just want to learn, you're going to find people that are just going out of their way to try to get you to come shoot the next match, and they'll set you up with anything that you need. I've seen people show up with nothing, no guns, no holsters, no ammo, and just through the generosity of shooters, they could have shot the entire match with loaned gear.
Yeah, going to watch one is a good advice. That I should have said that too, because that's another great place to ask questions. If you read the rule book, or not, but if you go to that first one, that's a great place to ask, so that you're not standing on the line about to shoot, and then that question pops in your head like, hey, why is this about to happen? You can see a lot of those things. And so all you need to watch a match, you don't have to pay. You just need hearing protection, eye protection. And if you stand in the back, no one's going to make you do anything. You're just observing. But feel free to ask questions of people standing around, because they'll be happy to clarify why something's happening in a certain way or why things are done like that. And gather as much information as you can. And the only harassment you're going to get is, well, are you going to come out next month? Are you going to come on? We'd be happy to have you. People will answer questions all day. So they'd be happy to have you.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've mentioned on this show before. I run a local 3-gun match. I've been running it now. I'm going into my third year, so I've run it for 2 full years now. One thing, and it sounds self-serving, but I tell a lot of new shooters, come out the day before when we set up. A lot of these matches, not all of them, but a lot of them will like have a setup the day before where they're setting up these stages that we shoot. The benefit of that is you're walking around these stages the day before, you're moving things around, you get a chance to ask all the questions you could want. And usually as I'm setting up, I'm telling people, okay, here's what's going on in this stage. Here's kind of the idea what's going on. These targets were shooting with this gun, this targets were shooting with this gun. But yeah, they get to ask questions. And another nice thing is that I'll be showing them stuff and they'll be like, so we have to, someone could be, so we have to reload the gun. Yeah. Do you have mag pouches? No, I don't have any mag pouches. All right. What gun do you have? I'll, message someone and we'll have some here tomorrow. You get an idea of maybe what you're going to need. If you don't have it, you have to have a sling for your rifle. Most 3-gun matches you don't, but maybe this match you had to have one. You've come the day before. And I think the biggest thing is now you've walked around and it's not an unknown. If you show up the day of and you just start looking around and there's all these, steel props around and there's walls and there's holes and ports and just all this other thing, and you start looking around, you're like, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know what's going on. But that won't happen now because you set it up, you've seen behind the, the screen, so to say, the inside workings, and it's not this unknown now. It's like, okay, the match director said, I want to run here and shoot these, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to shoot this, and then I'm going to switch guns, or, if it's USPSA, you're going to, don't forget about this target here. I mean, stuff like that, you can really see all that ahead of time. And I think most of the shooters that do come out, and I have a fair amount that come out. I mean, I had one this last weekend, and I think the month before I had one come out. Every other match I've got a new guy coming out before, and they're always more prepared and seem a little more comfortable. So I think that's not a bad way to do it if you can. And I think if you email a match director and you say, hey, I'm new, I've got questions, can I come help set up? I doubt there's a match director that would turn you away, because rarely can we find enough help to do what we want. So we'll be happy to have the help. And there's not many match directors making money doing this. I would say 99% of them are doing this because they love the sport. And if they love the sport, they want to get someone new into it. So I think they would definitely be willing to do that. I think we're going to wrap up here, but the one last thing that I wanted to talk about, which I think is really, really important, is, and this goes for classes, this goes for shooting competition, is check your ego before you get into it, because you're probably not going to be as good as you think you are. And if you come in with this big ego, one of two things will happen. One, you'll just get crushed. And a lot of times there's, I've seen more than one person get crushed because they had this idea of how they should perform and they don't come back. And, that's I think that's one of the things we don't want to happen. The other one is that they come out and they don't really perform well, but their ego won't let them admit it. And then, like I think Mark referenced earlier, this is stupid. This is just a game. This is, that guy's showing me this, and that's not the right way to do it. I'm going to do it my way. And they just don't progress. And it's like, I think there's a saying that, like, someone says, oh, I've been shooting for 20 years. It's like, no, you've been shooting for one day for 20 years. You haven't progressed any past that very first day. You've just been doing the same thing over and over. And, if you don't check that ego, that's really easy to have that happen. So if you guys got anything closing, maybe you want to add on that, Mark?
Yep. My last thing would just be to encourage you to, make that scary first step to go to the range and see that competition. Even if you're not going to do it, just go out and spectate it, because it's the same as taking training. It's the same as buying a gun. You're investing in your future, and you just have to look at it that way. It may be scary, but it's worthwhile for your development. And development is a step in self-actualization and becoming a better, more rounded, well-rounded, happy individual. But no, I think you'll say to yourself, why didn't I do this earlier? And so just bite the bullet and do it.
Mike, anything to add?
Nope, just enjoy the journey, and you'll realize that it's going to turn into way more than just about guns. It turns into the people, and that is one of the coolest things about this community, is the lifelong friendships and some of the positivity that comes from it. And it's an awesome escape from everyday grind.
Yep, I agree. It's that is true. And you know what? And I may hate to end the show with this, but like, you could show up and just not like competition shooting, try a couple different ones, and you just don't like it, and cool. Like, I'm sure it's not for everybody. Being so into it, it's hard for me to imagine why not, but I'm sure it's not. But at least you've taken that step, you've tried it. I guarantee you'll learn some things about it. And I know there's defensive guys that will do like a USPSA match every 2 or 3 years, just to, like Mark was saying earlier, pressure test gear, pressure test themselves, kind of see if just get into a different shooting situation and see how they do. And they can come out and crush it, and then they're like, all right, well, still don't really care for the sport, but I learned what I needed to learn. So yeah, any more that you guys want to add? Okay. Well, we're going to wrap this up. I forgot to mention this earlier. We do have a sponsor for the show, Primer and Co., which for people that know me, that is my wife's company. She is investing into the podcast. If you've noticed from the first episode on, my mic quality has gotten better. We're going to continue finding new gear for the other guys so that we can kind of up the quality of the audio. We'll probably look at video in the future. So that is our sponsor for right now. So that is Primer and Co., which is you can go to the website www.primeandco.com. That's 2A apparel. The idea with that whole company is that it's just kind of everyday casual gun stuff. It's not real in your face. So the whole idea is to spark a conversation with people. So if you're into guns or you're getting into them, go check that out. She's got a lot of ladies stuff, which is hard to find in the shooting world. So go check that out. And yeah, we will talk to you guys later. Bye.